Hello, this is Matt on the Moon Family Sedan channel. As many of you are aware at this point, yesterday, two amicus briefs were filed in the SEC v. Ripple case. So there are now a total of 15 amicus briefs that have been filed. Although technically, again, as is always the case, the judge has to approve them. So technically it's an application that includes as an exhibit the brief, the amicus brief. But nonetheless, there are two filed yesterday in support of the SEC. Now, I already made a tepid / lukewarm jam because there are no hot jams in this current environment with crypto markets tanking. There are no Lambos, there are no hot jams. There are lukewarm jams and there are tepid jams. So I put out a tepid jam a little bit earlier today, thoroughly ran through the first one that was filed. The second one, I may cover that in the future, but I want to cover something that I don't want to wait because I don't have that much, I don't have enough time to go through, but I don't want to delay reporting on this. It's the opinion of at least a couple attorneys within the XRP community that there's good reason to speculate that the second amicus brief that was filed yesterday in support of the SEC may have actually been written by the SEC. That's right. It could have been ghostwritten by the SEC, sent to a third party, and then the third party filed it under their own name and presented it as theirs. Wild stuff. And it gets even more ridiculous too, because like I've said many times, that it is extremely difficult to find people who think that the SEC is right in their assertion that XRP is a security, or just even on the general facts in the case. Very difficult to find parties outside of the SEC that that believe the SEC is in the right and Ripple's in the wrong and XRP holders are in the wrong. It's very difficult to find that. And anytime I do find it, and I can't think of a single exception outside this, anytime I can find anybody that believes that Ripple's wrong, outside of the SEC anyway, it's because they have a bias against Ripple and or XRP. And that is the case here. I'm going to share with you a tweet. Oh, God bless Twitter's the social media. They put out a tweet weeks before filing this, ripping effectively on XRP's utility or insufficient utility. I'll show you exactly what they stated. So here you go, somebody who doesn't even like XRP filing something that would harm XRP. How about that? How curious. Really grinds my gears, folks. But before going further, I do want to be clear, I do not have a legal or financial background of any kind. I am not offering legal or financial advice, and you definitely should not buy or sell anything because of anything I say or write. I'm just an enthusiast who enjoys making YouTube videos about crypto-related topics, but just as a hobby and just for fun. So again, I'm not going to go through the actual brief in this video. I may at some point in the future, but there's plenty to talk about here even outside of that. Now, I do want to, well, other than to cover the conclusion. So here's the conclusion of the brief from this firm. The firm's name, what's the full name? It's NSEI, New Sports Economy Institute. Oh, by the way, shout out and credit to James Filan, attorney and member of the XRP community, for sharing this. So it's NSEI, New Sports Economy Institute, who submitted this brief, and the conclusion reads as follows. For the foregoing reasons, the court should grant the SEC's motion for summary judgment, while also clarifying the definition of investment and affirmatively state that assets which do not generate cash flows should not be marketed, promoted, or sold as investments. Now, David Schwartz, who is Ripple CTO and co-creator of the XRP Ledger, reviewed this amicus brief filed in support of the SEC and thought that the conclusion there is a bit odd. Because again, they stated here, if something's an investment, it should be generating cash flow. Because again, it was stated here as follows. Clarify that the definition of investment and affirmatively state that assets which do not generate cash flows should not be marketed, promoted, or sold as investments. So David Schwartz wrote, are they seriously arguing that stock in the 80 or so S&P 500 companies that have never paid a dividend and do not intend to ever pay one should not be marketed or sold as investments? Oh man, it just goes downhill from there. So maybe I'll cover the whole brief at some point, but even just, I thought I'd at least highlight that so you get like a taste of how absurd the amicus brief actually is. Here's what attorney Jeremy Hogan had to say about this. NSEI files an amicus brief in support of the SEC. NSEI admits that, quote, it does not operate in the crypto industry, end quote. So what unique perspective is it bringing to the court? This is more a research paper than an amicus brief. Yeah, so You gotta wonder, what in the hell business do they have submitting anything in the SEC v. Ripple case? Kind of curious, right? Which brings us to the main event here. So check this out. And this comes from attorney Fred Rispoli, member of the XRP community, who tagged me along with some others in the community and shared the following perspective. And this is where we're getting into the concept of this amicus brief filed by a third party, perhaps ghost written by the SEC itself. Check this out. The NSEI amicus is really interesting to me for a few reasons. First, as pointed out, this entity has no involvement in crypto at all. Looking at its history, it really only gets involved in cases as amicus when sports gambling issues are at play. So why is it getting involved here? At XRP White Fox 87, that's a person on Twitter here, pointed to a complaint by the SEC against NSEI. I looked it up. NSEI just settled in September, with the only issue left to be determined is, get this, how much money they need to pay the SEC. So pause. Turns out they were actually sued. NSEI was sued in 2019, and the only piece of the puzzle that we're waiting here, to conclude that interaction, is how much money NSEI has to pay the SEC. Well, that's interesting, and now they happen to be writing an amicus brief in favor of the SEC's position while they're waiting to find out how much money they'll have to pay to the SEC. Well, that's interesting, isn't it? And so attorney Rispoli says, everything else in that case is pushed way out to late 2023. Second, the law firm that filed the amicus is not the same firm representing NSEI in its SEC lawsuit. Amicus counsel's office is literally across the street from the SEC, and it appears a number of attorneys there have ties to the SEC. Third, in my opinion, the brief, which is actually well written, even if the argument is wrong, truly reads like it was ghost written by the SEC. And then parentheses, he notes, ghost briefs happen all the time, by the way. And then he says, lastly, I think this brief leaks the SEC's endgame, which I coincidentally said just a couple days ago. Right on page 28. I think this is the SEC begging the court, realizing it is losing, to at least be explicit in limiting its holding to XRP only, and not use general language that could more easily be applied to the wider crypto universe, thus giving the SEC more of its coveted flexibility to pursue other projects. Or I'm desperately trying to divine a deeper meaning where there is none. Excellent thread by attorney Rispoli, and I appreciate his insight. So you can see here the fear of the SEC. If it's written by them, well, it's just another indication that they do realize that things in the SEC v. Ripple case not going so well for them. Really not going so well for them, and kind of trying to nudge the judge to go ahead and, if you could rule against us, if you could just, speak specifically about XRP here and not speak in generalities that would make us lose more of our flexibility, aka power, because, they're going for the jurisdictional land grab endlessly. Interesting thoughts, right? And then XRP community member Wrath of Kahneman said to attorney Rispoli, is this something that happens? Back channel messaging through Amici to the judge? That's something. Yeah, and so I'll note, I thought the same thing. I was like, is this wild? Could this possibly be legal? And so attorney Rispoli said, yes, but effectiveness comes down to how well the parties and court know of each other. There is apparently a Wall Street Journal writer that is provided info from the Federal Reserve. Thus, when he writes, he is speaking for the Fed without speaking for the Fed. So it's more an art than science. And then there was a community member named Citizen Zarpinoy, I guess is how that's intended to be enunciated, who wrote, Ghost Amicus Briefs? Is that even legal, Fred? Halloween's over, so it's a bad joke. and then Fred Rispoli responded and said, no, it happens from time to time. It just sounds less cool if I said contract brief instead. Legally, the attorney that signs off and files has to actually read it, and by filing is attesting that there are no bad faith arguments /facts, but that's the only barrier. So there you go. in theory, it sounds like if this is indeed the case, what happened if the SEC actually wrote this amicus brief for a third party, it's not illegal. Although it does make me wonder how this could possibly be legal when the NSEI is waiting to find out how much they have to pay the SEC. You know, doesn't that seem a little bit peculiar? It can't just be me that thinks that, right? And then XRP Julian Williams wrote, interesting question, but why don't they settle by negotiation unless Ripple are playing hardball? ? And Attorney Rispoli said, because they really don't have to yet. Win at summary judgment and it's SEC dominion over all of crypto. Lose at summary judgment and SEC still gets money from Ripple by offering to waive any appeal for money. This is overly simplistic, but the risk-reward calculus for SEC favors letting summary judgment play out. So let's pause and note, that is something I was unaware was a possibility. If the SEC loses at summary judgment, we always knew that there was a risk that they could appeal and that they probably would. I didn't realize it would be a possibility that Ripple could pay some sort of monetary compensation for, quote unquote damages, and then the SEC would just go away and they'd waive their right to appeal. I didn't even know that was a possibility. That's awesome. In fact, that's really good news because I would love for the SEC to have a way out of this. And if they still get something that way, okay, whatever. I don't care. I just want this whole damn thing to be over. And then attorney Bill Morgan, member of the XRP community, seemed to have a similar reading of the situation to attorney Rispoli. And attorney Bill Morgan wrote, no, I got that last point. The amicus brief ghost writer ? Seems pessimistic about the SEC's prospects and makes the dominoes will fall argument that if Ripple wins, it will help the scam projects, which is, of course, another logically fallacious argument. Must be SEC written. So there you go. He thinks it actually was written by the SEC. So and these are attorneys, like they don't say stuff all willy-nilly. They share their open, honest opinion here. But they're in the camp of logic and reason. It is very safe to say. So I just found this endlessly fascinating. This is possibly what's going on. And again, with the fact being that this firm seems to have no business writing in a crypto-related case, and they're waiting to find out what damages they have to pay. I'm just like, come on. And they hate XRP. Like, check this out. And this was uncovered by my fellow XRP YouTuber, Mickle XRP, on you can see him at Mickle Markets Mickle, rather. He's the one that uncovered this tweet right here. So there was an XRP community member, Mason, who wrote, what does XRP plus Cardano equal? And that was on October 16th of this year. NSEI responded to that out of nowhere, and with their 10 followers on Twitter here, and they wrote half the potential of HBAR. So there you go. XRP and Cardano combined have half the potential of HBAR, says NSEI. So here's a firm writing in favor of the SEC, harming XRP, and we know they don't like XRP. Might they be a bit biased? Come on. Like, just come on. This is completely absurd here. My gosh. Oh, this is why I put out a tweet. I responded to that yesterday evening. I wrote, in part, it's near impossible to find unbiased people who think the SEC is right. So this isn't surprising. They are biased. They filed this, and I'm fine. Everybody's got bias. I'm biased in favor of XRP. But what I'm saying is, if you have somebody who just doesn't have a dog in the fight, almost 100% of the time, 99.99% of the time, they're going to find that Ripple and the XRP holders, the position that we broadly hold, are correct. They are the right ones. Which is why anytime I see somebody who is supporting the SEC, I'm like, okay, what's your motivating factor? What is it? Seriously, just what is it? And here, they don't like XRP. So how about that? Uncovering it all. I'm not a financial advisor. You should not buy or sell anything because of anything I say or write. That would be a very, very, very bad idea. Until next time, to the Moon Lambo.